Hi guys, so welcome back, and in today's video we're just going to focus on CSS, and the card you can see on top is what we are going to build using HTML and CSS. So let's get started. So on the bottom you can see I have a blank HTML template, and also I have CSS file that has some default settings. For instance, we can see I'm loading Google fonts, and specifically I'm loading the Poppins font. So I already showed you how you can upload or you can link your fonts. Also, I have the basic HTML styles, the basic CSS styles. And the first thing you always do is to link this CSS file to the HTML using the link. And then we link it and you specify it's a CSS style sheet. And then you can reference the file, which corresponds to the file name that we do have here on top. So the CSS is linked up. The next thing is to go live. So we can go live and see it. So something else you might notice is that we do have some assets. So for instance, we have the headphones asset. So how can you get this headphones asset? You can go to my GitHub repository and then github.com/techwithtwin/TikTok projects. So these are all the projects I've been doing on TikTok. And then you can look for the headphones sale project, and then you'll see that asset inside there. So you can just download this asset, and then let's continue. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going in my folders. You can see I don't have that image. I'm going to drag that image from my other window. Then you can see the image has been loaded and it's called headphones.png. So this is the headphones.png we are going to use. So let's get started. So the next thing is that you can realize we do have icons. You can see like this icon and this icon. So all these are font awesome icons. I showed you how you can add font awesome icons, but I'm going to repeat. So we are going to load the CDN link, CDN.js font, like this one. We're going to load the font awesome for the font awesome CDN link so that we can have the CSS for the font awesome. And then you can copy the link tag and come and paste it. You can paste it above the style sheet, or yeah, you can do that. So then we save that. Then the CDN for font awesome is loaded successfully. So that's it. You can close that window. Let's go to our new window. And the first thing first we are going to do is let's create a div with a class of card. So let's go to the body. We're not going to link this JavaScript because we're not going to add any functionality. Let's create a card. And then inside this card, you can see this card is this card. You can see it has two things. It has the left hand side and the right hand side. And what the best way to think about CSS and the design layouts of the HTML is to think of this as boxes. You can see we have two boxes inside this card, and one of the boxes is twice as large as the first box. You can note that. And then, so we have two boxes. So let's create those two boxes. So the first thing I'm going to create is a div with a class of image wrapper. And this image wrapper will just be this section, which will hold our image. Then we create an image. Then the source will be the headphones image that I showed you to download. The alt is, you can say headphones image. And then I'm not going to add this. So the next thing is to check out what we do have now. You can see that image is too large. We can add the size directly to the HTML to tell the browser what size should we request, and I'm going to specify 200. And then you can see now that looks a bit nice. So we have the left hand side. Let's go to the right hand side. So we can create a div with a class of content. This one will hold all these content. And then to start off, on the top, we have something we can call a tag. We can create a div with a class of tag, and inside let's create a p tag and say free shipping. After the tag, what else do we have? We have a heading. You can use heading level 3 and say You can just copy paste this. Command C. All right. We are continuing with the content. You can see now we have yet another div, and this div is for the price. So we can call this div a summary. So this summary will have the previous price, the current price, and the helper text. So I'm just going to create yet another div. You don't have to do this, but I have divided this into three. So what, box 1 has the tag, the box 2 has the heading, box 3 has all these three, and then we continue with box 4, which is a button, and then box 5, which will be this indicator, and then the final box will have these two buttons. I told you to think of these like buttons, like boxes that you're trying to fix the puzzles inside the specified card. So then we can create a summary. This summary will hold the previous price, the current price, and this call to action. So we are going to create the previous price. So we can say dot previous price. And then we can say this one previous was $49.99. You can go to the finished version. You can see the content being shown here. The next thing you're going to add is the current price. So we can say dot price, and then we can say now it's 39.99. And then finally, let's add a CTA. So CTA, and then we can say the offer is valid until April 3 or as long as stock lasts. So I'm just copy pasting or typing out what was provided here. And then the next thing we create is a button. So you're not going to create this button inside the summary. This one will be outside. So you can say button. And then you can give it a class of primary because this is the primary button, and say add to cart. After the button, as I said, we now have the stock div. So this stock div will show us the stock. So we can say dot stock. So you're going to create a div with a class of stock, and then we create another div that is empty and call it indicator. So we give it a class of indicator. So what does this div do? This div is this icon you see here. Then next is the text. So you can use a paragraph tag and say 50 plus pieces in stock. And then finally, let's create a div that will hold those two buttons. So what I'm going to do now, these buttons, I'm going to give them a class that is called secondary buttons. So you can say dot secondary btns dot secondary dash buttons. And then this one will have two buttons. So you can just say button. And then they will have a same class because you can see they have almost the same styles, only just the icon that is changing. So I'm going to say btn.btn, that is the common class, then multiply this by 2 to get two buttons. Right, so you can do that. And then let's go to the font awesome and look for this icon. We are going to call it, so let's go to font awesome. Then let's search for way. So you can see this icon that is called scale. Now let's take the second one. So the second one is scale balanced. You can copy that and then come and paste it in the button. And then the next icon we want is for the heart. So this is the icon you're looking forward to. This is the heart. So you can go here and create and search the heart. So you're going to take the open heart, this one. That one. This is what you're going to take, which is the open heart. And then you can see there's a button to copy. So you just copy. And we get out of there very quick. And then let's paste that there. After doing that, you can see now we have the text. So let's add a paragraph inside the button and say add to cart. And then let's do the next one, which is add to wish list. So let's go to the finished version. You can see now everything, every CSS, every HTML element has been created. So let's jump into CSS. So you have seen how we have added the content, then how it looks like. So the next thing is to start with the CSS. Let's style the background of the body. So you can say body. Background color, I already have the background color that I chose. So it's FFECC0. You can see it has shown. The next thing is to get access to the card. The card has a class of card. You can say a background color of white. So, and then you can see it takes up the full width. So let's give it a width. So I'm going to say width, something like 500 pixels. Right, that looks nice. So the next thing is to make sure that the card is in the middle of the page. So how are we going to do that? So we are going to say display flex and justify content center. You can see it, it's now in the middle. The next thing is to add some paddings to the body because everything is close to the edges. So you can say padding to rem like that, and then you can see it has started to take shape. All right, then inside the card, you can see inside the card, the elements are too close to the edges. So we can do a padding of 2 rem inside the card as well. 2 rem. All right, you can see it. And then you can see the edges are too sharp. So how we do it is that we add a border radius. Let's add a border radius of 10 pixels. You can see now it looks a bit rounded and it looks similar to the finished version. The next thing is that you might realize that these headphones take half of the size of the other elements. So we are going to use Flexbox to fix this. So we are going to say now here, display flex. Then you can see now they align themselves. Each takes up the full half space, but this is not what we want. So something else I forgot is to add the font family. So we can add the font family here. The font family you're looking for is Poppins. And then as a fallback, we use sans serif. You can see now our card has changed. All right. So let's continue styling this. So the next thing is that we want this content to take up twice as much width as this image wrapper. And before I continue, let me add the color that you're going to use. So I'm going to create a CSS variable called blue. This is the blue we are going to use. 1A, 47. And then we can add the color now as so every element should have that color. And then I think it looks a bit cool. So next up is we said that we display flex inside the card. The card holds these two, as I showed you. The card holds 2 elements, 1 and 2. The card holds 2 elements, the image wrapper and the content. So what I'm going to do now here is I'm going to give them a gap of 5 pixels and then leave it at there so that they cannot be close even if the size is small. What next do? We start styling the content. This is the content we are talking about. The content has the tag, the H3, the summary, the primary buttons, and the secondary buttons. All right. So we can start the content. So we come here and say dot content. And the first thing is to display this flex and flex direction of column. Doesn't change too much, but you can see now the button takes up the full width, but that doesn't add up a lot. Let's add a gap now. So gap of 5 pixels. That looks a bit nice. And then when we want the content to take up twice as much width as the headphones, there is a property in Flexboxes called flex. So when we say this takes flex 2, we say this one should take as much width as the other element. It takes twice as much. So that's how what flex 2 does. When we say flex1 and flex1, this means that they should take equal width. This is like dealing with the fractions. So if the first one is 1, this one takes twice as much width as possible. All right, so this one will try to divide this container into 3, and then the content takes up 2. So something else now we need to do is to make sure that we grab the image wrapper .img-wrapper. And then we say that the img wrapper is basically the div that wraps the image, the headphones image. So what we can do now in the image wrapper is now we can say this one is flex1. So a lot has not changed, and it's because the image is overflowing. So what we can do is that we can grab the .image wrapper, and then you grab the image and give it a width of 100%. Then you can see, as we expected, the headphones take up half, not half. The flexbox divides the headphones into 1. This one takes up twice as much as the one that we gave. All right, so that's it for the columns. You can also use grids here, but in my case, I didn't want to use grid. They're a bit complex to work with. The next thing is that we want to style the tag. This is the tag, and this is the tag we are talking about. So what we need to do in the tag is give it the background color of our blue color. You can see it's added the blue color. And then you can see it's not visible, so we can add a color of white. And then you can see it takes up the full width. We can say width to fit the content. So you can say width fit content. You can see it fits the content. The next thing is to modify the size of the font. So we can say font size, then 0.6. All right, it looks a bit nice now. And then finally, let's add some paddings. So we can add a padding vertical 0.1 rem and padding horizontal 0.3 rem. Then you can see it looks a bit nice. And then finally, let's add a border radius. You can say border radius of 10 pixels. We are done with the tag itself. Let's move on to the heading. So the heading, you're just going to change the width, no, the font size. So we can say font size, let's do 1 rem. And then you can see now it looks similar to our finished version. So the next thing is to start styling the summary. We grab the summary and we start with the previous price. So we can say, or we can start with the summary as well. Let's do the previous price. So summary dot previous price. The previous price happens to be this, and in our case it happens to be this. So we are going to say, I'm going to create the dot summary. We grab the previous price. The first thing is you can see it has a closed line. The closed line here, that is text decoration. So we can say text decoration of line through. You create a line through. You can see now it has added that. And then we can change its opacity 0.8. It gets a bit faded up. And then that's it we need to do about that. The next thing is to style the price. This is the dot summary, and then we grab the price. So we can say dot summary, and then we grab the price. And then what we can do here is we increase the font size to 1.5 rem. You can see it is a bit large. And then a font weight of 700. You can see everything is starting to match up. The next thing is to style this section. This section, we called it the dot summary dot CTA. This is the dot summary, and then dot CTA. So you can do dot summary and then dot CTA. We reduce its font size. So you can say font size maybe something like 4.5 rem. You can see it becomes very small. And then we give it a color of gray. I think that's okay. It looks a bit nice. The next thing is to style this button. So this button has a class of primary. As I said, this is the button with the class of primary. Let's grab it. So you can say dot primary. Okay, so we can give it a background color. So the background color I chose is hash 47 88 EAE9. You can see how it looks. The next thing is to make sure that this doesn't have the ugly border. So we can say border of none. The border is gone. Then you can see the text and the background color are not visible. We can say color white. And then let's increase the font weight. So you can say font weight of 500. Let it looks a bit bold. And then we need to increase the paddings, vertical and horizontal. So we can go and do padding. And then vertical, let's do something 8 pixels and horizontal 12 pixels. So you might be asking, where am I getting these numbers? These numbers, are they magical? No. You just experiment and see the look and the feel of the button as you go. So the next thing is to add a border radius to the button. So we can say border radius of 5 pixels. So finally, you can see we have some designs inside the button, whereby on the bottom part, like a thin line, you can see it has a line that is more shade. So we are going to style that using the after pseudo selector of the button. So you can say primary, then you grab the after pseudo selector. The first thing is to add the content of nothing or empty content. Position. This one will be positioned absolute to the parent. The parent is the primary button. So we can give it a position of relative here. And then position of absolute. And then let's give it a background color. So we can say background color of hash 0066 FFAC. So this is the darker color you want. Let's give it a height of a percentage of the parent. So we can say height of 12%. And also you can experiment with these ones. And then let's give it a let's give it a width of 100%. And then let's do a bottom of 0. On the left of 0. You can see it there. Something else you might notice is that this now looks a bit sharp. So let's go to the parent and give an overflow of hidden. And then you can see now that color shows up. If I do red here, you can see it. So if I do the red, you can see it. But let's return to what was present. So you can see it. It is fainted here on the bottom. The next thing to style is this stock. The first thing we style is this div indicator. We created an indicator div. This is the indicator div inside the class of stock. So let's go to the stock. Let's start grabbing the indicator. So we can say dot indicator. We can give it a width of 8 pixels and a height of 8 pixels and a background color of hash 06 D68B. And then finally, you can see now it shows up as a box, but we want it to be rounded. So how do we add it rounded? So to add a rounded shape, we do a border radius of 50%. You can see it there. The next thing, let's target the stock div. So the stock, and say display flex. You can see now they are displayed flex, but you can see they are not on top of each other. So there you can see one is on top, the other one is in the middle. So we can do align items to the center. And then let's give them a gap. You can see they are too close to each other. So we can give it a gap of 0. Let's do pixels. So 4 pixels is okay. The next thing, let's style this text. So we can style the text by grabbing the dot stock, and then we grab the p. How am I getting all this? We have the dot stock div with the inside we have an indicator, and then you are grabbing the p tag. So the first thing we need to do in the p tag is to reduce the font size. So we can say font size 0.6. I think that looks nice. Finally, let's style the buttons. These buttons have a common class of btn. Let's start from there. Or let's grab the parent and display it flex. So you can say dot secondary btns. You can say display flex, and then a gap of 0.5 rem. It looks a bit nice. Let's now focus on the btns. So the dot btn, you can say now inside the btn. So the btn is these two buttons. 1, 2. They are inside this dot secondary btn div. So inside the btn, we first display it flex because it has two items. Then you can see they are displayed flex. The next thing is to add a background of transparent. So you can say background color of transparent. So the background color becomes transparent. And then let's add some paddings between the element. So you can say padding vertical 5 pixels, horizontal 10 pixels on the button. You can see the button has started text shape. The next test width is to give the border. So 1 pixels, solid gray. You can see now it has started text shape. Let's add a border radius of 5 pixels. Border radius of 5 pixels. Looks now nice, almost done. Since you have displayed flex, let's align these items to the center, align items to the center. And then you can see now the icon and the text is too close. So we can say gap of 0.4 m. And then let's add a cursor of pointer. So now if you hover over here, you can see the cursor is pointer. Let's add some hover effects. So to add a hover effect is btn, and then you grab the hover state. And then whenever you hover, you change the background color to blue. Then if you hover, you can see now it's that. Then in the hover state, let's change the color to white. Now it looks a bit nice. And then let's remove the border whenever you are in the hover state. So you can say border none. Looks a bit nice. The next thing is to add some transition to make sure it transitioned easily. Transition. And then you say 2 seconds, 0.2 seconds. Is like 200 milliseconds. No. Yeah, 200 milliseconds, something of that sort. And then now if you hover, you can see now it takes some time to change the hover state. And then guys, that's how we do create such a card. It was a bit simpler. So let me know in the comments, which other project would you like to learn? Which other JavaScript concept would you like to learn? Are you ready to learn React or not? Let me know in the comments. And thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and follow and share with your friends. Thank you.